We've got Representative Scott Cepicky who's swinging back in with us. Hello, Scott.
Good afternoon, everybody.
And I mentioned a packed house. I've never had all four microphones on at any one time. We are delighted to be welcomed in studio by the relatively new Commissioner of Education. I'm sure she would say brand new Commissioner of Education. Lizzette Reynolds joins us in studio. Hello, Commissioner. How are you?
Hello. Thank you for having me.
How has your time been in Tennessee?
It's been fabulous.
Yeah?
Yeah. I don't know if I'm going back. I love it. I love it here.
Well, tell us a little about how your world changed this past June as you were named the new Commissioner of Education in the state of Tennessee, and what challenges immediately presented themselves for you and for the state. I mean, what did you see as challenges in the state?
I mean, coming in, part of it is, the fact that I did leave my family and home in Texas. And so that's been somewhat of an adjustment, but I've been able now to get 2 dogs out of the 5 here, luckily. And so that's kind of
priorities. I like that. I like you already.
Absolutely. But, I think, a lot of the challenges really there's been a lot of good work that's happened in this state when it comes to education. We've had a series of governors that really believe that Tennessee needs to be the best place for kids to have an education future. But the policies are the policies. And so the hard work has happened, but we need to continue the work because you can't just be a one and done. You can't say, okay, we're going to invest $100 million in reading. Okay, we're done. Okay, everybody have at it, right? So we've got to really continue to figure out how we can guide school districts to do the best things that they can do with their kids with the supports that we give them, as well as the student-centered funding that the legislature passed last session, to really continue to improve and continue to move the needle forward so that this state becomes the best state for education in the country.
And Cameron, you jump in here because you've got youngsters. You got the 4, so
yeah.
you're
I collect kids at my house.
Right. What have you identified as? I mean, have you had the ability? I don't want to jump ahead of you if you've not, but to come into a system of this size, of this magnitude. I mean, obviously, your reputation precedes you, and your experience precedes you. How do you tackle something this big to get a handle on where we are and what the priorities are for where we're going?
Well, I mean, the first step obviously is getting to know the team, right? And finding out where the resources exist and the strength of folks. And I was really blessed. We have a great team at the department. They've been able to get me up to speed and be able to help me understand where we need to go moving in the future. We've hired our chief academic officer, Christy Brown, is a former superintendent from Jackson County, has been super helpful in helping guide me when it comes to the landscape that is Tennessee. I mean, I came from Texas, but this job is different. I mean, in Texas, I was a deputy commissioner in sense of the word, more like an operations person, really kind of making sure that the trains are running on time. Here, it's a lot of engagement. It's a lot of getting to know people. It's a lot of traveling. I've put about 7,000 miles on the truck at this point, and I've only been here 3 months. So there's a lot of challenges, and there's also the need to build trust. People don't know me here, and I've got to make sure that they know that they can trust the work that we're going to do at the department, that the goal that we have is to ensure that their kids are learning on grade level and that they're going to be successful for life in their futures.
Matt, don't let her fool you. This is somebody with a policy brain. Mm-hmm. And that's a really important thing when we're talking about how do we solve the challenges that we're facing is the governor's brought in somebody with a real knowledge of how education policy works. And so I'm super excited about that. One of the questions that I had as a foster parent is, What about the kids that aren't your rank and file normal kids in terms of, or I should say typical kids, in terms of their trajectory? They bounced around a lot. One of the things I care about deeply is automatic IEP eligibility for foster kids because of what they're facing. How do you address some of the challenges facing kids that are either in residential facilities, in the foster system, through obviously no fault of their own? Because my experience is a lot of those kids have the worst learning challenges.
Absolutely. Well, a lot of it is because there's been low expectations given to those kids, right? Right from the start, they become that kid.
Right.
I mean, I've been in situations where I've heard, well, we were a great school district until those kids showed up.
Yeah.
We even experienced that. I even experienced that in my elementary school in Texas, where my kids went to school. We had a foster community that came to our campus, but the numbers were so small, you really didn't know how they could achieve because of the N size, as they call it.
Right.
So you have to have a certain number that you can be able to identify, because there was such a small group, you didn't really there was no accountability for them. So you could almost obscure what their pathways were, how they were achieving. That's the hard part, right? And so all you can do is really hope that the leadership on that campus is going, you know what, I don't care where they came from. We're going to make sure they can read and do math. And that is it's an unfortunate situation in that a lot of times there are people that come in with these deficit perspectives of kids. And foster kids. And then thinking about kids that have been formerly incarcerated, what are we really doing when they come back into the system? We're not doing a lot, right? They're going in, they're serving their time or whatever it is for 6 weeks. They come back to the class and it's like, yeah, well, sorry, you just missed 6 weeks of school. What are they going to do? They're not going to stay. They're going to drop out.
Right.
So we really need to be thinking about what are those supports and how do we better support them in all the ways, but that's what partnerships are for. The department is about teaching kids, right? We're about the academics. We're about leveraging the opportunities for academics, but we need to work with our partners in whether it's the Commission on Mental Health, whether it's the Corrections Department, whomever, to ensure that all our kids have the supports they need so they can be successful and so that they can come to school in a safe environment and just sit there and learn to learn.
Amen.
From a relationship standpoint regarding the General Assembly.
Yes, sir.
How has that getting to know you period gone thus far? I don't know how much you're able to do that. During the special, perhaps that gave you an opportunity, as all of the General Assembly was assembled in one place. I mean, you'll obviously have the opportunity come January when they come back in, but what does that process look like? Because obviously you depend a good bit on the General Assembly to help initiate some of what you see are the challenges and some of the problem areas within our education system.
Well, those were some of the first meetings I had as soon as I walked in the door. So I've met with all the chairmen of the committee and Chair Lady Moody.
I bet some were more impressive than others.
Always. And I'm here with one today.
Gross.
I missed that one.
I say that
Matt, she won't be here all the time.
No, that was one of the first things I did because, again, a lot of the work that I'm in charge of implementing came from their acceptance at the General Assembly, right? A lot of the stuff the administration, proposes. And so the General Assembly has to say, okay. And so they did. And so that is and it's also building trust.
Do you look at that as ultimately part of your responsibility as commissioner, whether it's you or someone that works alongside you, to make sure that the General Assembly has the information necessary to make the votes that's going to make education better? I mean, that's a major part of your job.
I mean, I cut my teeth in the legislature. I mean, that is really where I learned education policy, was working in the Senate Education Committee when I worked for now President, former Governor Bush. His biggest agenda was education. So in order to achieve what the governor needed to achieve, we had to work hand in hand with with our legislature in Texas. And so I bring that same perspective here, because I know the value of those relationships and ensuring that, I'm always honest and truthful and transparent and, do my best to make sure that they have the information they need to make the decisions that they have to
Scott,
make.
you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say something. If you've been around education in the last 4 or 5 years in Tennessee, we have really taken a new direction in education, right? And when Commissioner Swin moved on, from having my conversations with Commissioner Reynolds, you can see the thoughtfulness of the governor of looking at where we've been and where we need to go, and making sure he brought someone in that understands where we're going to go, of that we are going to be the best, and we're going to make sure all kids, doesn't matter what demographic they come from or what environment they come from, our job is to get them all across the finish line. And Commissioner Reynolds has expressed that to the chairman of education as, she's, as a compliment, is she's nuts and bolts, right? Mm-hmm. This is the policy. This, if you want to do this, here's what we need to do. And there may be some pain involved with that, but we're going to absorb that pain and move it forward because it'll benefit our kids. And the relationship that we have, that's why I brought her over, is we talk a lot. She talks to a lot of the chairmen. She's very accessible to us. We bounce ideas with office, and she's not afraid to say no to us. And you know what? That may not be the best way to attack it. Have you thought about this? Right. And that's the relationship we got to have.
When we talk education on my show, I like to say that my kids are perfect. They all get straight A's. They've never given me any disciplinary issues, mainly because, Commissioner, they don't exist. I don't have any children. But with that in mind, invariably the conversation revolves around school choice when we talk about public education. I like to use the example, and perhaps it's oversimplifying it, that if I told everyone in the listening audience that they had to go to one grocery store to buy bread, do they believe the quality of the bread is going to go up or down based on the fact that they have to go to that one particular store? And I think everyone can easily see where the answer would be the quality goes down, because the store knows that you have to come there to get bread. Well, it's an oversimplification of where we are in the public education system, but the public education system has long worked on the premise of, if you live in a particular area, you go to a particular school system. Right. How can we better able parents to have some choices within their educational opportunities for their children in the state of Tennessee?
Well, first of all, they need to know that they have the choice. And right now, they have the choice in 3 counties. And so we're working to ensure that they have access to the things that they need to be able to inform themselves on where they need to send their kids for that purpose. But at the end of the day, it's not even a matter of just having choices of schooling or learning environments, because oftentimes I have 3 kids. They're all different. And my oldest ended up having to go into a private school because at the end of the day, even though I was a fairly high-ranking individual in the Texas Education Agency, unfortunately, this campus leader didn't care and would not provide the services that I needed, that I knew my child needed. So we utilized our credit, right? And we took a lot of money on credit and put our kid through private school for 4 years. Not everybody has that opportunity. Not everybody has that agency to be able to identify a better learning environment. And if the system says you have to go here, you're going to go here. I mean, there are instances in this country where parents or caregivers or grandmas or aunties have found that the school that their kid is zoned to is not doing the job they do. And so they will go to the father, or go to a colleague, and use that address. And they've actually gone to jail. And all they were doing were looking for a better learning environment for their kid. So that's what this is about. It's about giving families choices. In the most cases, families are going to choose their neighborhood schools because they can. But we want to let them have that information that they need. What's the quality that is being delivered? Are the offerings to what the parents want for their kids, or that the kids want, particularly when you think about high schools? So there's a lot of opportunities, not just in private schools, but also in public schools. Public schools also have opportunities to create choices. They also can collaborate and think about how can we come together and provide all of our families different opportunities where we can functionally create these pathways that are going to lead them to the better jobs. So, choice is about not restricting anything. It is about really trying to find that best learning environment for your kid to succeed.
Our guest is Commissioner Lizzette Reynolds. She is the new education commissioner in the state of Tennessee as of, I guess, end of June, moving forward. And we're thankful that our good friend Scott Cepicky has stopped by with her to talk about educational opportunities in the state of Tennessee so early on in the new year. Cameron and I will talk more at length about this right after the bottom of the hour news with Mac Morey, which is coming up in about 6 minutes. But there will be no vote today on the House floor for Speaker of the House. It appears that while Steve Scalise enjoys the majority of his own conference. The GOP voted Steve Scalise to be their official, quote, nominee. He does not currently have the 217 votes. One would assume that's the only reason why they're delaying the vote this afternoon on Speaker of the House. More on that coming up right after McMurray's news at the bottom of the hour. We are pleased to be joined by Lizzette Reynolds, who is the new Commissioner of Education for the state of Tennessee. Representative Scott Cepicky with us as well. Cameron Smith in his normal spot on Wednesdays during this 2 o'clock hour. And I was enjoying the conversation between Cameron and Lizzette as we were speaking, just because you have the kids in the system.
Yes.
And so you kind of get down, and Scott, you too. I mean, you get down to the nuts and bolts in a way that I don't. I'm just kind of playing surface. But I do want to ask you this surface level question, because when issues of education come to me, more often than not, they are lifestyle issues. Meaning books in the library and whose decision making, it should be present with regard to those books, or issues involving transgender issues in the schools. How present is that in your world, and how would you speak to that to the audience?
Right now, what is present in my world is implementation of the A through F system that hasn't passed since 2016. So it's really been about what are the our academic standards? How are we going to ensure that kids are learning? So it hasn't been. I think there's been a lot of work that's been done in the past in the General Assembly, but
is that more of a question? And I'm not I was about to say, is that more of a question for the political side of this than the educational side?
Yeah,
of this?
well, 100%. That's a General Assembly issue. That's a policy issue on social issues, and what the General Assembly feels is the best for Tennessee and its students. What the commissioners is going to get into is more of the nuts and bolts of how we deliver the education component, how we make it more efficient, how we make it better, looking at the data and crafting and telling us, hey, by the way, this is what you need to pass to make this happen. Like you said about the conversation off the air about kids in foster care. How can we affect that change? We can do it more effectively from the General Assembly by passing law, because it has the words shall or will. Right. That takes all the ambiguity out of it. This is what you're going to do. Those social issues, I hope the commissioner will try to stay out of the best she can and leave that to the General Assembly.
So are you pleased? Scott and I have spoken a lot over the last year or so about reading. Are you pleased what you're seeing with regard to reading? And talk to us a little bit about what you hope to see regarding mathematics and testing across the state.
Sure. Well, yes. I love all the pieces that have been put into place for reading. And I think that there is an opportunity again to also increase our math achievement in this state. But the difference is, for the most part, is with reading right now, it is a K through 3 issue, right? So the research shows if you're on grade level by grade 3, you will be successful. But there are also different strategies after grade 3, starting in grade 4 and beyond. Where our NAEP scores have flatlined or declined is comprehension. And while comprehension is happening in those early grades, it becomes a different level of strategies when it comes to really teaching older kids to read, particularly because the English language is really difficult language to learn. Like we have we have these different forms of language. So it's not all phonetically spelled out. And when you get into advanced technical reading, those are the kinds of issues that kids are having to tackle. So if we're, the thing is right now we're at the 40 percentile-ish, right, with third grade achievement on reading. Still not good enough, because you're talking about a lot of kids that aren't even going to have those foundations going into this more intense reading opportunity. So
should they be advanced, or should we make sure they can read before we advance them?
Well, that's why y'all passed the retention law last year, and absolutely. And I think, for the most part, we're going to see that a lot of kids got the skills they need. I think though, there is a warning out there. We've got kids that were promoted to the 4th grade, that are on the hook to achieve adequate growth by the end of 4th grade. And so there's another level of potential for retention of children in fourth grade if they aren't reading on grade level.
That was that was one of the things we did is if you took one of those on-ramps to fourth grade, that was fine, but now you're going to be held accountable on that TCAP in fourth grade of you better be on grade level or it's going to be retained.
Yeah.
So be careful taking the on-ramp when you could have taken the summer school and the tutoring and got the extra help you needed. So that's something we're going to leave. But in mathematics, you can't have retention in mathematics because it builds throughout the academic career of that student. It's going to have to be different. And in mathematics, one we're working with the commissioner on is we are plowing a new field here in mathematics. There's nothing out there to fall back on. We're going to invent this in Tennessee that could lead to the change in mathematics across the country.
Well, Scott, I thank you for introducing us to the commissioner. Commissioner, I thank you for being in the state of Tennessee.
Thank you.
Your reputation well precedes you back in Texas and beyond. And we're so excited to see, what you can do with this wealth of opportunity and what parents can expect through educational opportunities for their students. Thank you for stopping by. And we are open anytime. You know where we are. Just come on in and let us know what's going on in the world of education. We'd love to have you anytime.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.